Welcome. I'm Jessica Tietjen, and this is the Evolving to Exceptional podcast, where we talk about reaching peak performance in our workplaces, homes, and communities so that we can live our best life possible, an exceptional life.
Those 21 leaders that took the assessment, we each did a one-to-one debrief, and they learned their state, and we set individual goals. Then we all came together. So there's 21, 22 of us now in the Zoom room, and we did a collective debrief. And they found out that together, collectively, although a few were in polarization, some were in acceptance, I think one person was in adaptation, collectively, they were practicing minimization on one another. And it was quite eye-opening. And they wow, this is what we're doing daily to one another. And I asked them to consider, how is this manifested? And there was a whole lot of quiet in the room because we want to avoid the uncomfortable. And I asked them, this is a predominantly, or it was an all-white group with just about 4 women. And I had asked the women, kind of as a inside conversations, do you feel seen and valued? And to a person, all 4 of them said, not always, not often. And so I didn't bring that up in the debrief, but what I did say, there is an opportunity here to notice that there are 4 women and the rest are men. And I want you to know, according to the research, that in order for there to be genuine equity or parity in a room, it needs to be 70% female. And there was this, oh my gosh. And I said, so there's an opportunity to recognize that women are interrupted twice as much as men. No one's fault. It's just the reality. Parents and teachers, I'm both, I'm a parent and a teacher, interrupt their girls twice as much as their boys. And when you know that's in play in your home and in your boardrooms, right, then you can take a breath and go, oh, wait, let's give more voices an opportunity. You don't have to point out anybody in the room. Let's give more voices an opportunity to speak. And so you might go around the circle, for example, or you might have everybody write their answer on a Post-it. And if you didn't share, please send me an email. You can get all those voices heard, but just in a way that's meaningful for the individuals in the room so that nobody's minimized.
Well, and you know what kind of came to mind as you were talking about that too, with people at different levels, made me wonder, especially understanding kind of the science of mirror neurons and how we'll often learn from and mimic the behavior of those that we're around a lot. And I used to joke that our leadership team would do this, the CEO would sit in a certain way, and pretty soon the whole room was kind of sitting in the same position. And it was almost comical to kind of watch that shift. And the reason I bring that up is because it makes me wonder, depending upon where that CEO or whoever the top leaders are, how often the others will then mirror that behavior, even if they maybe exist at a different level of cultural intelligence themselves.
Exactly. The person with power in the room is truly powerful. Whether or not they are minimizing it, it's happening. And was something that my husband, who's the CEO of a small manufacturing company, he said to me, so I have a few women leaders. For how long do I have to make sure that they have their voice? And I just took a deep breath and I said, I don't know. For how long have women not been the power centers? And he said, oh, okay. And he said, well, what do I do to make sure that they have a voice in the room? And I said, oh, that's pretty easy. And he goes, what? And I said, it's 3 simple words. If you hear somebody interrupting one of your female colleagues, it's let her finish. And you say it, 3, 4, or 5 times, she won't be interrupted anymore because you're in the position of power in the room. And he's like, I can do that. And I'm like, yeah, you can do that. It's not hard. And this is something that parents can do for their girls. This is something that teachers can do. This is something that we women can do for one another. Hey, let her finish. And you say it in a way that's invitational, not calling somebody out. That shit's not going to fly. Anybody, when you feel blamed or shamed, no behavior changes when you don't feel safe. You know that. You're a brain person.
Right. Yeah, you're shut down, right? Once that fight or flight kicks in, then you're not gonna learn through that. Or do you find that leaders need to have developed their own self-awareness to a certain extent before they can really develop this cultural intelligence, or can they go side by side? How does that work?
Oh, that's good. So when a leader hires me, we're doing it in tandem. I do both leadership development one-to-one through executive coaching, and then I train the whole team at once. And then after we get the leadership team trained up, I've got an online course so that we can pull the cultural intelligence through the organization and have me not involved. This leadership team gets developed, but this one-to-one coaching, to your point, that PowerPoint, what I like to do is help the executive stay a step ahead, stay a chapter ahead. So we'll do their debrief first and set their goals first. And then I'm meeting them probably once a week for the first month, first 5 or 6 weeks to really develop that self-awareness, because, you can't genuinely care for somebody else unless you're cared for. So I
Mhm.
want to pour into that CEO and make sure that they feel so valued and seen. That compassion just spills out. Like, oh, damn, this is how good it feels to be valued and seen for my unique qualities,
Mhm.
for all my broken and beautiful. And the best part is nobody has to be perfect. As much as our society is into perfectionism, um, there ain't nobody that's perfect. And when we get to just allow ourselves, accept ourselves as we are and keep adapting our behavior, because we're going to screw up and do it right, we give that same grace to the people on the leadership team. And then that compassion spills out through the organization. It just has this lovely ripple effect when we can pour into one another. I just love it. You can tell I get all lit
Yeah.
up about it.
Well, and one of the ways I like to say it is a little bit different, is that rather than thinking of ourselves, as being broken, instead to think about it as that your body has done exactly what it was programmed to do in
Yeah,
the best way that it knows how to support and keep you alive and to navigate the challenges and
right.
experiences you've navigated.
Yeah,
And you get the opportunity to choose if you want it to become more intelligent, to navigate experiences
yeah,
in more sophisticated and effective ways, or whether you want to continue operating with the same patterns that maybe you developed early in life. And so
yeah.
it's kind of a progression that we get to move along. One thing I was thinking
Beautiful.
about
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about as you were I was thinking back to that story I shared about that room I was in and those male leaders reacting, is now being so much further in the future and understanding these principles and these concepts of self-awareness. What I really wonder is what they were experiencing in their bodies in that instance, what was triggered within each of them
Yeah,
and what was going on for them, and not assuming that it was all the same, right? Because different people can react to the same information,
exactly.
and have a similar reaction, but a different source of it, a different reason why they're reacting in a particular way. And so when I teach self awareness and especially embodied self awareness and understanding and listening to those neurobiological communications that are coming through, that's something that I think many leaders don't necessarily pay attention to as data or as information for them.
Right,
Like, what,
right.
oh, I'm feeling a certain way, I'm feeling hot, or I'm feeling that I need to stand up, or
Yeah,
and they think of that as just a thing that's happening, not necessarily as information or as intelligence.
right. What you're describing is acceptance, is allowing ourselves to be hot and taking off our coat because it's really distracting us from running the meeting or
Yeah.
participating more fully. By not engaging our body, that's minimizing.
Yeah.
By not paying attention to our physical sensations and our emotional response or the reaction that we're currently having, we're minimizing. And it hurts. A soul needs to be paid attention to in order to flourish. A brain needs to feel safe. Does a brain need to be comfortable? No, because brains don't learn unless they go through a little bit of uncomfortable. But if we're downplaying our uncomfortable, if we're downplaying our physical sensations and our emotional responses, minimizing us doesn't allow us or anybody around us to fully show up. You had brought up this word trigger, and it's really important word. I just want to point out that there are people that they take the IDI, they find out their minimization, at the mindset of minimization. It's not a label. It's just a snapshot in time of where you currently are. And the beautiful thing is that once you are aware of it, now you can start growing out of it. And you can't not know. You can't not start recognizing, oh my gosh, there it is. And it's like, ew, you begin to see it all over. And slowly you begin to even accept that as part of reality and go, wait, I can do better by starting within me, like you're describing, feeling with me. And that gives people through, like you're saying, the mirror neurons to feel themselves when they're with you. It's beautifully empowering. Maybe that's why I call it empowering partners, my business. So one thing it's helpful to know is that even though you might be in minimization, if you get triggered, if somebody says something off-putting or threatening or just downright hurtful, you can fall back to polarization temporarily and into that fight or flight lizard brain mindset of I'm out. Because you don't, trash compactor brain where your options narrow and you're scared and you just got to get out of there, or you've got to respond. The two responses are silence or violence, right? And those are your only two responses from minimization and polarization and denial is silence or violence. When you take that breath and you slow it down, and maybe it's 6 deep breaths, right? And you observe your feelings, your sensations, the anxiety that has come up, that process of observing, as you know, with the brain research, allows you to take a step back. And that's what gives you an opportunity to soften your gaze, your perspective. And that's where your power is. We think power is something like cape flying behind us, hands on our hips, big time, loud. Actually, power is really quiet. It's slowing down, taking that breath, softening your gaze so that you can get more information. Because the moment you have more information about this person or situation, everyone's safer. But you got to be willing to learn. And you've got to create a safe environment for you and the other person if you want it to happen.
So I'm curious what happens when you have somebody who's in that denial, who's all the way there at the bottom, who's just denying the differences or denying the issues themselves. How do you move them from that state, even to start moving towards minimization and the other direction?
That's a great question. Just to clarify, the behavior that you're talking about is actually polarization. Denial isn't something that is aggressive or even aware of. The people that I've debriefed with, very few, only about 4% of the population around the world are in denial and adaptation. And it's about 15% are in polarization and acceptance. So not a lot of us are actually in polarization. We think in society we're in polarization. We're not. We're actually in minimization. And this is what we're doing to one another. And that's pretty shitty when somebody says, well, I don't see your womanhood, or it doesn't matter if it's female or male author. Well, actually it does, right? Because it's going to have a direct impact on that story. And so when you have that kind of triggering response, that's what throws us back to polarization. And that's what we tend to see on social media. And that's why we think things are so polarizing, because people minimize somebody and it throws them back to polarization. And how do you deal with somebody who's coming in hot? Is that your question? With somebody hot? I actually wrote a blog about this. It's called The Third Way. When you're in minimization, polarization, or denial, your only two responses are silence or violence. And that tracks back to the lizard brain, the oldest part of our brain, nothing you don't know. So we are well adapted at silence and violence. And silences it can be withdrawing or downplaying, right? And violence can be loud and aggressive, or it can be slow and quiet over time. But both of those responses are ultimately alienating. There's a third way, and I'm happy to share this link with you, where you, like we talked about before, slow down and take a breath, broaden your perspective. And whether you take a breath for 5 minutes or 5 hours, it doesn't matter. Whatever you need to do to soften your gaze and get to this place where you're ready to get more perspective, that's when you can offer this third way. And one of the ladies that I was talking with, it was actually an executive coaching session. She said to me, I don't know how to respond when somebody says, you just hired her because she's a woman. And she said, what do I say? Do I just ignore it or do I object? And I said to her, are you struggling with this? Because if you object out loud, then you could kind of be putting off the person. Or if you're quiet, you're inadvertently agreeing with the person. She said, yeah, it seems like those are my only two options. And I said, the third option is this one where you actually acknowledge them and you. And she said to me, what does that sound like? And I said, it sounds something like, I get it. It's important that we have more women and this is in a construction firm, because we need more diversity in order to have more people in the company. We just need more employees, period. So we need more diversity. And also, I want you to know, because I am one of the few women in leadership in this organization, it does make my heart happy that we are hiring more women, because it's definitely a benefit to our company, because we're going to construct homes and buildings that are thoughtful of a broader audience. And she said, oh, I can acknowledge both of us. And I said, yeah, that's the culturally intelligent way, where both of you walk away from an encounter feeling valued and seen. Is that an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it made me think when you gave kind of that example, my curiosity would probably have also been to understand why the person's asking the question. What is the concern that they have, or what is the rationale? And she may have already known that, but that would have been kind of my first, like,
Yeah.
what's going on within that person to
Yeah.
understand what it is they're seeking.
And that's actually a great way to start. So if you're going to shift from knower to learner, starting with that. So this is a woman who actually knew who she was talking with. So she knew the context. And to your point, if you don't know where somebody's coming from, or somebody comes in hot and you don't know them, there's nothing wrong with slowing down the conversation and saying, what prompts you to ask me that question? I appreciate that question. And you're doing it again in this inviting way, as opposed to get off my back sort of approach. That is the short answer to your question. When somebody comes in hot, either in person or an email with an accusation, that's what you do, is you slow down and get more information from a place of compassion. And if you're not feeling the compassion, take care of you. Take a nap, take a break, walk away, go get a snack, do what you need to do to care for you. Let your gaze soften. And then circle back to what prompted that question. I'd really like to know. And then drop into silence. That's really important. And let them fill out the story, because something has hurt them if they're trying to hurt you.
So I'm curious, just, as we kind of move towards wrapping this up in a few minutes, what do you think would be most beneficial to organizations or individuals who are trying to navigate this issue in the best way that they can, or the challenges in the best way they can, to increase their own cultural intelligence, or to do some of their own work on this? If they were to want to engage with this, what are some of the things that they could do to get started?
Oh, it's beautiful. Well, you can email me and I'll send you a blog on the 4 essential skills of cultural intelligence, just as an introductory piece. I've got a book coming out next winter, The Communication Connection. Right now on my website, I have an online course called Awkward to Awesome, because we all go through awkward to get to awesome, just like we are evolving to being exceptional. And it'll teach you the skills in about 36 sessions and 30 minutes each. You'll have a whole toolbox full of tools to begin to practice this acceptance and adaptation in your encounters. So we're ready to go for you. If you want to engage individually or as a leadership team, I got you covered.
I love it. I love it. Fantastic. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom, things you'd want to leave our listeners with, either related to this topic or about yourself, and what people can do or should be aware of regarding this?
Well, thank you for that question. I think the most important thing to think about during this time of apparent divide in our society and any sense of divide in our communities or in our homes, the most important thing to do is to care for you first. You can't genuinely care for another person if you haven't cared first for you. In doing hundreds of debriefs now, these individual debriefs after they take the IDI, and we uncover time and time again that people are in minimization. Some are in polarization, some in acceptance, but most are in minimization. One of the things that we talk about is how you show up for other people is how you show up for you. It's pretty incredible. And sometimes there are tears when people realize for how long they've been minimizing themselves and their needs. And how sweet it is to set up a goal or two before they leave me of self-care, developing some self-awareness. And if they're not ready to identify exactly what they need, it doesn't matter, because I'll give them a little bit of a log, and we'll just journal for a couple of weeks and find out what time of day or what time of week you need a little attention. And it might be as simple as a yoga class, or letting your kids do the dishes, or having a contemplative moment in the morning. It's not huge usually. It's just these little tweaks in our lives to care for our soul. As you know, Jessica, is so important. That's the foundation of both our work, is this self-care.
Yeah, and I love that you hit on that, because it always has to start with that, like, that inner awareness and that inner intelligence, and like bringing that to the forefront so
Yeah.
that then you can apply it more effectively. And whether that's in your relationships and interactions with others and gaining a better cultural intelligence, or whether it's navigating decisions better, solving problems better, improving your relationships, it doesn't matter what thing you're focused on. It all starts with that kind of like inner journey and that inner awareness.
It does. I think a lot of people are a little overwhelmed with the way we are in society right now, with the way our culture is. And what I don't know if enough people realize is that culture is created one conversation at a time. And those conversations of caring for others start with this self-care. You care for you, and it spills out into your home and your community and your office in just beautiful ways. And I'm so grateful to you, Jessica, for allowing me this platform with you to kind of spread this compassion.
I absolutely love it, and I couldn't agree more that that intelligence spreads. And so the more work we do on ourselves, the more our families, our children, the people that we work with get impacted by that. So I think it is fantastic. Thank you so much for coming down and talking about such a relevant and important topic and issue. And I just encourage our listeners to, as always, keep evolving, keep growing, keep looking at how you can rewire your neural pathways so that you can live your best life, an exceptional life. And clearly, one of the very best ways that you can do that is to continue to kind of explore that awareness of yourself and that awareness of others, so you can improve those relationships and all of that collective cultural intelligence. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week. And we'll be back again with another episode next week.